All right, so you're thinking about going for a sexual violence counselor interview.
It's a tough job, but it's super rewarding.
Definitely. And to help you totally nail that interview, we're going to dive deep into RoleCatcher's resources.
They've got it all, like common questions, insights about the career, even some AI stuff to give you a boost.
We're going to zero in on those interview questions, really break them
We're
down.
going to help you get what they're looking for, not just what to say, but why you're saying it.
For sure. And the best part is, RoleCatcher's AI can actually help you tailor your answers to each specific job.
It's like having a personal coach. It analyzes the job description and tells you what skills and experience they want.
That's a game changer.
Totally.
All right, let's jump into some of those common interview questions. First up, what inspired you to become a sexual violence counselor?
It sounds simple, but it's deeper than just a nice story.
Yeah.
You gotta show you're truly passionate about this work.
Right.
The interviewer wants to see that you get the challenges, the emotional weight of it all.
The deep commitment it takes. Think about that spark. What really lit it for you?
Yeah, for sure.
Was it something personal, volunteering? Was there like a defining moment that made you want to help survivors?
And be ready for those follow-up questions, too.
Definitely. They might ask about specific challenges you see coming or how you plan to deal with the emotional toll of this job.
That's when you can talk about how you take care of yourself and keep learning.
Exactly.
Speaking of challenges, RoleCatcher's Career Guide gets real about the tough parts of this career. Burnout, not enough resources, even potential for secondary trauma.
You have to consider those things.
It's important to be real about that stuff, both for yourself and to show the interviewer that you're going in with your eyes open.
You got it. But don't forget the good stuff, the huge positive impact you can have on survivors.
Yeah.
Helping them heal, get their power back, find hope. That's the real reward. Okay, let's hit another common question. How do you approach building rapport with survivors of sexual violence? This is all about creating that safe, supportive space for healing to start.
You have to think about those crucial skills. Active listening, empathy, validating their experience.
Yeah.
It's making that person feel heard, believed, and respected, especially after going through something so traumatic.
RoleCatcher really highlights how important it is to create not just that emotional safe space, but a physical one too.
Right, so think about things like privacy, comfy seating, being aware of their body language.
Those little things add up.
Big time.
And remember, it's not about having all the answers or pushing your own ideas on them. It's about meeting them where they are, letting them lead the conversation at their own pace.
Right.
Okay, now this next question gets to the core of trauma-informed care. How do you ensure that survivors feel empowered and in control of their healing process?
This is where you got to recognize that the survivor is the expert in their own experience.
Yep.
Your job is to guide and support, not tell them what to do. It's all about collaborating and putting the client first.
RoleCatcher suggests giving them choices, information, encouraging self-care, and ways to express themselves.
You're putting the power back in their hands.
Exactly.
Think about some concrete strategies you might use. Maybe it's helping them set their own goals for therapy, offering different coping mechanisms, or just asking, what do you need right now? And truly listening to their answer.
Shifting gears to something more delicate. How do you ensure the safety and confidentiality of survivors? This is all about ethics, legal stuff, building that trust.
You're dealing with sensitive info.
Yeah.
You have to show you understand informed consent, mandatory reporting, and risk assessment.
RoleCatcher has great resources to get you up to speed on these policies. Be ready to explain how you'd use them in real life, stressing how important it is to protect your client's confidentiality while following the rules.
Absolutely. And remember, confidentiality isn't a blanket thing. There are times when you might have to disclose info if a child might be abused or someone's in immediate danger.
Right.
Be prepared to talk about how you'd handle those tough situations.
This next question takes us into more complex territory. How do you approach working with survivors who have experienced multiple traumas?
This means you really got to understand the long-term impact of trauma and how easily someone can be triggered or have setbacks.
Yeah.
You can't forget that everyone's experience is different. There's no one-size-fits-all approach here. Trauma-informed care is key.
RoleCatcher really stresses that you need to understand how trauma affects both the brain and body. You need to recognize the signs of post-traumatic stress and create that therapeutic environment that feels safe and gives them back their power.
Think about the techniques you might use, like grounding techniques to manage flashbacks, maybe creating timelines to help them process those traumatic events safely, or mindfulness exercises for coping.
Giving them a whole toolkit.
Exactly, and empowering them to choose what works for them.
And don't make assumptions about how resilient they are or how well they're coping. Trauma affects everyone differently, and it's vital to meet them wherever they are in their healing journey.
Absolutely. Building on that, let's talk about cultural sensitivity. How do you approach working with survivors from diverse cultural backgrounds?
It's super important to recognize that someone's cultural background can really impact their experience of trauma and how they heal.
Right.
RoleCatcher talks about cultural humility, being open to learning, respecting differences, understanding your own biases.
Yeah, you can't be an expert on every culture.
Right.
Instead, focus on building that genuine connection with each person. Ask them about their preferences for communication and support. Be open to incorporating culturally relevant practices into your therapy sessions.
Now, this next question focuses on accessibility and inclusion.
Yeah.
How do you approach working with survivors who have disabilities? It's all about creating that therapeutic environment that welcomes and accommodates everyone.
Disability is a spectrum. Each person's needs and experiences are going to be different.
Definitely.
RoleCatcher emphasizes collaboration and advocacy here.
Involve the client in making those decisions about their care.
Absolutely.
Be responsive to their needs and fight for them within the system.
Yeah.
Think about things like making sure the space is physically accessible,
Right.
using visual aids or assistive tech, being flexible with how you communicate.
And remember, don't let their disability define them.
Yeah.
Focus on what they're good at, not their limitations. Ask them what they need to feel comfortable and supported. Be willing to change your approach as needed.
Okay, this next one gets a bit personal. How do you manage the emotional impact of working with survivors of sexual violence? Taking care of yourself is crucial in this field.
You got to acknowledge that this work can really drain you emotionally.
For sure.
RoleCatcher stresses seeking supervision and peer support.
Yeah.
Talking to colleagues who get the challenges can give you invaluable guidance and support.
And don't underestimate taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries, doing things to relax, maybe even going to therapy yourself.
It all matters.
Doing things you enjoy can really help you recharge and prevent burnout.
Right, remember, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
Taking care of yourself means you can show up for your clients with compassion and keep that resilience.
Okay, ready for one more question before we wrap up this part?
Hit me.
This one focuses on the legal side of your role. How do you approach working with survivors who are involved in legal proceedings?
It's a tricky balance between giving support and respecting that legal process.
Right.
You're not a lawyer, so stay in your lane as a counselor.
RoleCatcher emphasizes knowing the legal system and providing ethical and appropriate care. Be ready to discuss those reporting obligations, limits of confidentiality, how you'd handle potential conflicts between your role and the client's case.
Be upfront about your role and what you can't do.
Yeah.
Explain you're there for emotional support and counseling, not to give legal advice.
Right.
Be open about the limits of confidentiality in legal situations, especially if you might have to share info because of a subpoena or safety concerns.
And be ready to talk about how you'd help your client through the challenges of the legal system, from dealing with the stress of testifying to processing the trial's outcome. It's about constant support while respecting the legal stuff.
Exactly. It's knowing that their healing might be happening at the same time as legal things are going on.
Right.
And being sensitive to how complicated that can be.
That covers a good chunk of those common questions. We'll be back with more.
Welcome back. Let's keep digging into these interview questions and look at some that might need you to think a bit deeper.
Sounds good. I'm up for the challenge.
All right, how about this classic? What are your strengths and weaknesses? This one often trips people up.
I can see why. It can be intimidating.
But it's a chance to show how self-aware you are and how you're always trying to learn and grow.
That's true.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance, highlighting your strengths without sounding like, you're bragging,
Right.
and admitting your weaknesses without, sabotaging yourself?
You got to be genuine and strategic. When you're talking about your strengths, focus on the ones that really matter for a sexual violence counselor.
Okay.
Think about empathy, active listening skills, experience with crisis intervention, knowledge about trauma-informed care.
Right.
Those are the things that make a difference in this work.
It's not just listing them off, though.
No.
You got to show how you've actually used those strengths in real situations.
Exactly. Share specific examples from your past, whether it's from a previous job, volunteering. even a tough personal situation where you had to use those skills.
Okay, so what about those weaknesses? How do you talk about them without, like, raising red flags?
Honesty is important, but always frame your weaknesses as areas where you're growing.
I like that.
So, for example, if you tend to take on too much, you can say you're working on setting better boundaries and delegating tasks.
Turning those weaknesses into strengths.
Exactly. Maybe you're still gaining confidence in leading group therapy, or you sometimes struggle to detach emotionally after tough client interactions.
Happens to the best of us.
Acknowledge the challenges, but then explain what steps you're taking to work on them.
That shows you're self-aware, proactive, and always learning.
Right. Now let's switch gears to a question that can make you stand out. What makes you the best candidate for this role? This is your time to shine.
I love this one. It's like they're saying, go beyond your resume, tell us who you really are.
You got it. Start by emphasizing your passion for this work and how well you understand the complexities of it.
Yeah.
Then weave in specific experiences that show your qualifications and how they fit with what the organization needs.
So tailor your response to that specific job. And this is where RoleCatcher's AI comes in handy, right?
Yeah, it breaks down that job description and highlights the keywords and skills they're looking for.
Use that info to your advantage.
Absolutely. Did they say they need someone with experience working with LGBTQ plus survivors? If you have that, point it out.
That's great.
It proves you've done your research and you're genuinely interested in what they need.
And don't be afraid to let your personality shine through. Let them see your enthusiasm and how much you want to make a difference.
Authenticity is key. They want to see the real you, not just a bunch of qualifications.
Couldn't agree more. And I know it might sound like a broken record, but practice, practice, practice.
Couldn't agree more.
The more you rehearse those answers, the more confident and comfortable you'll be in the hot seat.
Exactly. And don't just practice alone. Grab a friend, a mentor, or even use RoleCatcher's AI to get feedback on your answers.
It's like having a coach in your pocket.
A fresh perspective can help you polish your approach and spot areas to improve.
Okay, let's look at some questions that focus on your experience and problem-solving skills. Like, tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult client or situation. How did you handle it? That one can be tricky, especially if you're new to the field.
It's a behavioral question. They want to see how you've handled tough situations before. The STAR method is your friend here.
Situation, task, action, result.
I like it. Yeah, so set the scene. Describe your role, what you did, and emphasize the positive outcome.
That makes sense, but what kind of situation should you pick?
Does it have to be about sexual violence counseling specifically?
It would probably be best to choose a situation that relates to this role. Maybe you had a client who was resistant to therapy or someone who was struggling with really intense emotions.
Yeah, that way the interviewer can see how you'd use your skills and knowledge in a real situation.
It's really smart.
Be ready to explain how you maintain those professional boundaries, how you put the client's safety and well-being first, and how you use de-escalation techniques if you had to.
That's where all that training in trauma-informed care comes in.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to talk about the tough parts and what you learned from them.
Right.
It shows you're willing to reflect on your own work and always try to get better.
That's a good point. Okay, now a question about staying current. How do you stay up to date on the latest trends and best practices in sexual violence counseling? Things change so fast.
It's a fast-moving field.
This is where you can show your dedication to professional development.
Right.
RoleCatcher talks about going to workshops, subscribing to journals, joining professional organizations.
And don't forget about online resources. Websites like RAINN, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, the American Psychological Association. They all have tons of info and updates on research, best practices, the latest trends.
You can also show them you take initiative.
Oh, yeah.
Have you read any books or articles lately that have helped your practice? Presented at a conference? Written for a professional blog?
It all counts.
Let them know you're engaged in the field and you love learning new things.
Speaking of being proactive, let's tackle the question that often makes people uncomfortable. What are your salary expectations?
Ugh, that was always so awkward.
How do you talk about money without underselling yourself or scaring them off with a number that's too high?
Right.
The key is to be prepared. Do your research. Websites like Glassdoor and Salary.com can give you an idea of what sexual violence counselors typically make in your area based on your experience.
That's a good tip. Gives you a realistic starting point.
And don't be shy about asking about their salary range, too. It shows you're looking for a fair and transparent process.
Good point. And remember, it's not all about the money.
Right?
Think about the whole package benefits, vacation time, opportunities to grow professionally. Sometimes those perks can make a big difference in how happy you are at work.
Absolutely. Okay, ready for a question that gets to the heart of what you believe. What is your personal philosophy on working with survivors of sexual violence?
This one's all about being real. RoleCatcher stresses being client-centered, trauma-informed, and culturally sensitive. But beyond that, what are your core values?
Right. Think about the guiding principles that shape how you work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in empowering survivors? Do you focus on building trust? Do you advocate for social justice and changing the system?
This is your chance to share what you believe in a way that really matters to you.
It's personal.
Let them see the heart behind your work, that driving force that makes you want to help survivors heal.
And throughout this whole process, don't forget about RoleCatcher's AI.
Oh yeah, it's a great resource.
It can analyze the job description, pinpoint those key skills and experiences, help you make your answers match what the employer is looking for.
It's like a personalized interview coach.
Absolutely. Use it to practice, get feedback, polish your approach until you feel ready to crush that interview.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into acing that sexual violence counselor interview.
We've covered a lot.
We talked about those tricky questions.
Right.
How to use RoleCatcher's AI to really personalize your prep.
I hope our listeners are feeling more confident and ready.
And me too. But before we send them off to conquer those interviews, I think we need to talk about self-care. It's so important.
You're so right. It's easy to get lost in all that job search stress
Yeah.
and feel like you have to be perfect.
Trying to present that perfect image,
But taking care of yourself is not a luxury. It's crucial.
especially in this field.
Absolutely, especially with the emotional demands of sexual violence counseling.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide really emphasizes this,
I do.
reminding us that even experienced professionals have to prioritize their well-being.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly.
Taking care of yourself means you can show up for your clients with all that empathy and resilience they need.
So what are some ways people can actually work self-care into their routine?
Especially with all the chaos of a job search.
Yeah, it's tough.
Start with boundaries. It's easy to let the job search take over your life.
Oh, yeah?
But make time for things you enjoy, things
Yeah.
that help you recharge.
Like what?
Spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, a hobby,
Right.
even just a relaxing bath, those moments matter.
They do. And don't forget about exercise.
Oh, so important. Exercise releases endorphins, reduces stress. It can really improve your mood.
For sure.
Even a short walk, some yoga, it all helps.
And remember, self-care also means asking for help when you need it.
Don't be afraid to reach out to a therapist, a mentor, friends, family. Talking about your experiences, processing those emotions,
Yeah.
it can keep you grounded and help you feel less alone and overwhelmed.
Okay, let's talk about RoleCatcher's AI again for a minute.
Okay.
We talk about how it analyzes job descriptions and helps you tailor your answers, but it can do even more, right?
Oh, it goes deeper. It can actually give you feedback on how you're answering, point out things to improve,
Cool.
give you tips on your delivery. It even analyzes your tone of voice and body language,
Wow.
things you might not even notice yourself.
It's amazing how technology can be such a powerful tool.
It really is.
It's all about using every tool you have to show your best self, to prove you're ready for this challenging but rewarding work.
Exactly. So, as you're getting ready for this, remember to breathe, take care of yourself, and believe in yourself.
Believe in your ability to make a difference.
This field needs passionate, dedicated people like you. You can empower survivors, fight for justice, create a world where healing and hope are possible.
And we're rooting for you every step of the way.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and good luck with those interviews.
You got this.